Head-to-head, the class of 1976 versus the class of 2016. June 16 is Youth Day in South Africa, and June is Youth Month. To celebrate this, Hyper set out to capture a true comparison of how things were back in 1976 compared to now. Hype presents the class of 1976 and the class of 2016. Take a look at the average teen around you today. Are they really any different to the teenagers of 1976? As part of our youth issue, Hype decided to speak to both groups. Matt Tennyson and Sydney Dlamini were teens back in 1976, while Gwyneth Bowman, Promise Gumedi, and Raymond Fletcher are currently 17 and in grade 12. Making headlines. The big news in January 1976 was the launch of South Africa's first television service. In March of that year, the South African Defence Force withdrew from Angola, bringing Operation Savannah to an end. In May, Eskom announced that it was ordering 2 new nuclear power stations from France. The biggest news, however, was the student riots that broke out in Soweto on June the 16th. This was when the youth of this massive township launched a protest against the use of the Afrikaans language as a learning medium. Although the day ended in bloodshed and tragedy, it marked a huge turning point in the history of South Africa. In 2016, political scandals, allegations of corruption, and student protests have dominated the news. And of course, our president, Jacob Zuma, always seems to be making news, for all the wrong reasons. The political scene. Back in 1976, the country was ruled by the National Party, with B.J. Foster as president and P.W. Botha as his Minister of Defence, and apartheid was in full swing. There were vast differences between the white youth and those of colour. Most amenities, including entertainment, recreation and education facilities, were reserved for whites, even though whites were the minority. People of colour were forced to live in specially built areas known as townships. The schools, recreation, entertainment and medical facilities were few and far between, and very basic in nature. Black, Indian and coloured students could attend certain private schools, provided they could afford the expensive fees. Needless to say, few could. At schools of colour, they wanted nothing to do with the government, whom they referred to as the Boere. Textbooks that included anything to do with the Boere were rejected. Students would often organise anti-apartheid protests, and teachers had very little say in the curriculum and structure of education at the time. Many of the black youth fled South Africa to neighbouring African states, and a large number of them joined MK, Umkhonto weSizwe, or the Spear of the Nation. This was the armed wing of the African National Congress, or ANC. The white youth, however, had problems of their own. On completing school, every white male was required to do 1 year of compulsory military service. This was not a request, but a law. Failure to comply would result in a 3-year prison sentence. Many of them had taken part in Operation Savannah, the South African Defence Force's involvement in the Angolan Civil War that ended at the beginning of 1976. It would be fair to say that the average teenager of 2016 is not as politically aware as that of his 1976 counterpart. Apartheid was removed from the law books more than 2 decades ago, and since 1994, the ANC, once a sworn enemy of the 1976 ruling National Party, head the government. Jacob Zuma is currently the president. Students can attend any school, college or university they wish, with no restrictions based on skin colour. However, it is still the old case as to whether they can afford it or not. Gone are the days when young men were forced to serve in the military. The South African Defence Force is now the South African National Defence Force, or SANDF, and it consists of permanent force members and a reserve force made up of volunteers. This includes soldiers from the old SADF, Umkhonto weSizwe, APLA, which was the Tanzanian People's Liberation Army, the armed wing of the Pan-African Congress, as well as soldiers from the old TBPC states. These are Transkei, Bophuthatswana, Venda and Ciskei. Entertainment. On January the 5th, 1976, a historical event took place in South African history. television was finally launched. Prior to this, television was a big no-no. National Party politician J.M.B. Hertzog said that television was the devil's circus, or the devil's box, and that it would never be allowed in South Africa. It would totally corrupt and destroy the minds and morals of the people. Strangely enough, John Logie Baird, the man that invented television, was married to a girl from Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. Ironically, we could have been one of the first countries in the world to get television. Television fell under the auspices of the South African Broadcasting Corporation, or SABC. The only problem being that the SABC was controlled by the government, so you saw exactly what they wanted you to see. News broadcasts were one-sided, always showing the government in a good light. Programs that captured the hearts of 1976 viewers included The Brady Bunch, Rich Man, Poor Man, The Villagers, a local production about a mining community, and Willem, another local Afrikaans series starring Toby Cronje as a whimsical private eye. Television began at 6 p.m. and ended at midnight. 3 hours of the broadcast would be in English, the other 3 in Afrikaans. Today the youth is spoiled when it comes to choice. TV is no longer a novelty, nor a luxury. Basically every home in South Africa has at least one TV set. The array of channels with the option of satellite television gives the public too much choice. Channels such as MTV, Channel O and Cartoon Network have become very popular with the youth of South Africa. And then there's also choices such as Netflix and Showmax. Back in 1976, movies were a popular form of entertainment. The top movies of the year included hits such as Rocky, Taxi Driver, Network, and All the President's Men. At the Academy Awards, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest swept the boards. It won the Oscar for Best Film, Best Actor, Jack Nicholson, and Best Actress, Louise Fletcher. Another very popular form of entertainment, especially among the youth, was the drive-in cinema. Drive-ins were the place to go, says Matt. Every guy that had a car would take his date to the drive-in. Not that anyone actually watched the movies on show though. The drive-in was a perfect place for making out. Many a night was spent groping through a double feature. Today, sadly, drive-ins are a thing of the past. Cinemas are not as popular in South Africa, with prices skyrocketing for a movie ticket, let alone the customary popcorn and coke. New movies are released on such a regular basis it's hard to keep up. Youth today are rather downloading movies and renting DVDs persuasion. You can get just about anything from the internet, another luxury that did not exist in the 70s. The 70s were the decade of Donna Summer, Saturday Night Fever, and the disco. This is where you could shake your booty on neon dance floors under a revolving spotlit disco ball. In 2016, dancing is just as popular with the youth, with a wider variety of venues to choose from. Depending on what you're into, you can go to a goth club, raves, trance parties, the list goes on. Music has always played, and probably always will play, an important part in youth culture. Parents in 1976 would shake their heads in disapproval of the music their children were listening to, claiming it was rubbish. Most of those teens from 1976 are now parents themselves. It is now their turn to shake their heads in disapproval and claim that their children listen to rubbish. The more some things change, the more they remain the same. The big names of 1976 included the likes of Queen, Elton John, Wild Cherry, and Donna Summer. The top song of 1976 was Silly Love Songs by Paul McCartney and Wings. Today there are so many artists and genres of music, it is difficult to pinpoint specific names or songs. All that can be said for sure is that Madonna was right when she said, "Music makes the people come together." Whether it's pop, rock, reggae, rap, country, trance, dance, hip-hop, metal, or alternative, music will always unify the youth culture. Fashion. Clothes, it has often been said, makes the man and the woman. In fact, especially the woman. This has never been more true than among the youth. So what was the well-dressed youth wearing in 1976? Jeans were fashionable for both guys and girls. The top brands of the day included Lee, Levi, and Rich Rags. It would not be uncommon to see a guy wearing denim jeans, a denim shirt, and a denim jacket. The more faded your jeans, the better. You could of course cheat and buy yourself a pair of pre-faded jeans straight off the shelf. Of course, no self-respecting guy would do this. It was the fashion for guys to wear their hair long. It was not uncommon for a guy to have longer hair than his girlfriend. Another favorite with guys was stovepipe pants with straight legs and turn-ups at the bottom. Striped jerseys were also in vogue. Skirt lengths were short for the girls, with the mini coming out on top. The shorter the skirt, the more fashionable, and the more heads they turned. Formal wear for guys included wide ties with colourful prints. Dresses for girls ranged from fairly short to calf length. Popular styles included one-shoulder dresses and halter necks. And people dressed up to go out. Beach attire in 1976 was far more modest than today. Guys wore only baggies or skimpy speedos. Bikinis were the choice for girls. While they may have raised a few eyebrows and caused minor strokes with many apparent, they were tame compared to the beachwear of today. Hit the beaches in 2016 and you'll see far more flesh than you would have back in 1976. Girls' beachwear such as string bikinis and thongs would have had the wearer arrested for public indecency back in 1976. Today's swim fashions would have added an entire new meaning to the old song Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. Off the beach, girls today wear an array of dresses and skirts. Minis are still around, only it's trendy to wear them with leggings. Jeans remain popular with both guys and girls, only now having a denim jacket that matches your pants would be frowned upon. Fashion trends these days are often dictated by social trends. People who are into the goth culture can wear any color they wish, as long as it's black. A lasting trend among some guys is that of emo fashion. Stovepipes live on here under the guise of skinny jeans. Also popular in modern day are piercings and tattoos, and you're just as likely to find girls sporting tattoos as you are guys. In 1976 you would very seldom have seen a girl with a tattoo, and even guys that had tattoos were regarded as being from the shallow end of the gene pool. Economy. Things were cheaper back in 1976, way cheaper. 20 Rand could buy you a monthly train ticket and still leave you with change for coffees and a sandwich or two. You could fill up your car with 20 Rand and still have enough change to take on a drive-in movie. As far as cars went, you could buy a car for less than 4,000 Rand. Renting a one-bedroom flat would cost less than 100 Rand a month. You could buy a large two-bedroom flat for under 20,000. A guy could take his date out for supper at a good restaurant and then take her to a movie, all for under 40 Rand. If you wanted to catch a cheap movie, you could always go to a tea-room Bioscope. These would open at 9 AM and close just before midnight. For the paltry sum of 50 cents, you could watch a double feature. In fact, you could sit there from 9 AM to midnight and watch the same two movies over and over again, all for 50 cents. Oh, and your admission fee also included a free cold drink. Popular activities included 10-pin bowling, miniature golf known as putt-putt, and you would always finish off at a Pizza Hut or a local roadhouse. It was inexpensive to go out, especially when compared to today. While everything was cheaper, one must of course realize that salaries were far smaller. For a school leaver starting a first job, they would be lucky if they earned 120 Rand a month. Smoking was far more acceptable in those days. You could smoke on buses, trains, planes, restaurants, shopping malls, basically anywhere you wanted. And a packet of cigarettes would cost you under a Rand. These days, prices have become scary. While 13 Rand would have bought you a monthly train ticket in 1976, you will pay about 18 Rand just for a one-day return ticket. The price of petrol in South Korea is criminal. The 20 Rand you used to fill your car with in 1976 won't even get you 2 liters of petrol today. And the price seems to increase on a regular basis. Don't even talk about the price of cars in 2016. In 1976, 4,000 Rand would have bought you a good car. Today, you may be able to buy a decent set of tires for the same price. Finding a place to rent is not easy, and when you do find something, expect to pay through your teeth. Rentals will set you anything back from 5,000 Rand or above a month for a cheap place. Unless your rich uncle popped his clogs recently, forget about buying a place of your own. Small basic one-bedroom flats start in the region of 600,000 Rand, and the ever-increasing bond rate will bleed you dry. Dating is an expensive hobby these days. Dinner and a movie will not leave you much change from 300 Rand, and that's if you eat at a cheap establishment and go without popcorn at the movie. Movie tickets cost over 50 Rand on average. Tea-room baskets are a thing of the past. These days, few guys would ever dream of taking their day to play putt-putt. Clubbing is the way to go, and this doesn't come cheap. Interest fees, a drink or two, and parking will put a serious dent in your wallet. After you've been out, you won't be able to take your date to a roadhouse. With the odd exception, these no longer exist. For those not yet driven mad by the health police, smoking has become an expensive habit. A packet of 20 cigarettes will now cost you nearly 30 Rand or above, and when you do buy them, there are few places where you can actually indulge in your habit. A great way to be together at a fraction of the cost of movie tickets would be to rent a DVD and make your own food, cuddle up and spend some quality time together. It's not so bad, and a lot of couples enjoy this type of entertainment. Salaries are much higher these days, yet they still don't seem to stretch as far as they did in 1976. Technology. Life was simpler in 1976. There were no cell phones, email, internet, Facebook or Twitter. If someone wanted to get hold of you, they had to wait until you had a phone, either at home or at the office. Home computers are still a thing in the future. Only huge corporations use computers, and these are the reel-to-reel types that would take up an entire floor of a building. Back in 1976, Steve Jobs had just established the Apple Macintosh company after breaking away from Bill Gates' Microsoft Corporation. PlayStation and Xbox existed only in the imagination. If you wanted to play electronic games, you headed down to the local video arcade where you could play coin-operated games such as Pac-Man and Space Invaders. When you listened to music, it was on vinyl or cassette tape. Other than that, you listened to the radio. Radio 5, now 5FM, was the station of choice for most teens. Television hardly catered for the musical tastes of the youth. Pop Shop, a weekly half-hour program presented by David Gresham, was as good as you got. In 2016, young people cannot live without their cell phones. And if you do not own the latest model of cell phone, you are looked down upon by your peers. Cell phones include MP3 players, digital cameras, sound recording facilities, and you can even surf the internet. Kids as young as 7 have their own cell phones, and with crazes such as WhatsApp and Twitter, it has become affordable for young people to communicate like never before. Nearly every home will have a PC or personal computer. How would we ever get by without them? And of course, we have to ask ourselves how we would ever get by without the internet. Many teens would simply lay down and die if they couldn't access Facebook. In 1976, when a student wanted to research a project, they would have to visit the library or pore through encyclopedias. These days, the modern student merely has to Google the subject and just a click of the mouse puts the information at their fingertips, literally. Of course, a lot of this information is incorrect, but that won't stop the students in the least. Vinyl records belong in museums and are collector's items. These days, people buy their music on compact discs or CDs. Yet even these are fast becoming obsolete. Downloading music onto a PC, while not always legal, is common. Music converted into MP3 format means that hundreds of songs can be stored on items such as MP3 players and cell phones. If you want to watch a movie, you do it in the comfort of your own lounge, through the medium of DVD or digital video disc. Entire movies can be downloaded via the internet, and nearly every PC has the ability to burn DVD copies. The video arcades of the 70s are no longer with us. These days, electronic gaming is played on PCs, PlayStations, and Xboxes. Not only can you play at home, you can also play with other players in other countries, all via the internet. The combination of entertainment options given the technology of today is endless. With constant updates, there's always something new for the youth to enjoy and spend money on. Back in 1976, there was no internet and no mobile phones. Therefore, there was no email or text messages. If you wanted to communicate with someone, you wrote a letter and sent it by snail mail. When I was in the army and serving on the border, I would write letters to my parents, my girlfriend, and a few of my mates, recalls Matt. You would then have to post a letter, wait for it to get there, and then wait for them to write back. Obviously, it would then take time to reach you. It was normal to wait 2 or 3 weeks before you receive a reply. These days, you just send an SMS or an email and you have a response within minutes. Sport. By 1976, South Africa was already a pariah in the eyes of the world. Most countries imposed sport and cultural boycotts against South Africa. Cricket and soccer were only played locally, with no competition against international opponents. The Natal cricket team won both the Cricket Currie Cup and Limited Overs Gillette Cup during the 1976 season. It was only on the rugby field that South Africa was still playing internationally, and this was only on a limited basis. Australia, New Zealand and the British Lions were among the few international sides that will still play against the Springboks. In the local Rugby Currie Cup, Free State were the champions after beating Western Province 33-16. The 1976 Olympic Games were taking part in Montreal, Canada. It was at these games where 14-year-old Romanian gymnast Nadia Comaneci scored 7 perfect 10s on her way to 3 gold medals. Comaneci was the first gymnast to ever score a 10. Naturally, South Africa was not at the games. They had long since been banned. South Africans could still get to watch some of the big sporting events on television. The Wimbledon tennis tournament was one of the most popular. In 1976, Bjorn Borg became the men's champion, defeating Il Naste. Chris Evert took the women's title after beating Yvonne Corley. Since 1994, South Africa has been readmitted to all international sport. The country hosted the 1995 Rugby World Cup tournament, which they also won, and also hosted the 2003 World Cricket Tournament and 2010 Soccer World Cup. Currently, the big buzz is over the 2016 Olympic Games, which begin soon in Brazil. Unlike in 1976, however, South Africa will be represented at these games. In South Africa, sport is a big deal, and we tend to take it very seriously. Safety and security. 1976 will always be remembered for the Soweto uprising. It was a defining moment in our history. For those living in townships, life was often tough. There was a lot of political violence and crime was not uncommon. The rest of the country was, however, very safe. Children could cycle to school, it was safe to go out at night, and people felt safe and secure in their own homes. There were, however, isolated incidents. Trains that travelled near townships would often have stones thrown at them, targets of the youth opposing apartheid. 2016 is a different story. Safety and security has become a major concern in South Africa. We have one of the highest rates of murder, rape and armed robbery in the world. More than 50 people are murdered in South Africa every day, and a woman is raped every 26 seconds. Violent crime has become so rife that the media no longer reports on it. It is no longer considered newsworthy. Houses have been turned into fortresses. Everyone that can afford it will have armed response, electric fences, camera surveillance, and burglar alarms. Going out at night can often be a harrowing event. When you go to a club, you always wonder whether your car will still be there when you come out. If your car is still there, providing you don't get mugged on the way to the car, there's always a possibility that you'll get hijacked on the way home. And when you do get home, don't be surprised if the place has been cleaned out. Another thing that you'll see in 2016 is car guards. Try and park your car anywhere and suddenly, quicker than a bribe going into a politician's pocket, a car guard dressed in a yellow or orange Jaguar will appear. How did we ever manage to get by without them? I mean, seriously, how did we park cars without them? So, did the class of 1976 have it better? Or does the class of 2016 emerge as winners? It's difficult to say. While life was cheaper, safer, and a lot more simple in 1976, it did have disadvantages. Could the youth of today cope without cell phones, MP3 players, internet, personal computers, and PlayStations? That being said, how would the youth of 76 have coped with modern technology? As interesting as it is to compare, we're not going to try and call a winner here. Matt has probably the best solution. If I could pay what I did back in 1976 but earn what I do today, I would be in seventh heaven, says Matt. Also, if I knew back then what I know today, I'd have an absolute ball.